how can you estimate effectively software tasks when they are frequently beyond estimates by a factor of 2 or 3? It's a question I've got a few times, not exactly like that, but it's the latest version. So how can you estimate effectively when there's so much variation? I mean, the reason for these estimates being out by 2 or 3 times in a lot of software development teams is the variation. And depending on what you're developing, who you're developing it for, that variation is going to be greater or smaller. If you're doing some customizations for a customer and developing there, you might find that that's pretty safe. Whereas if you're going into a whole new area with a whole new module and developing a whole new part of the business, that's going to be a lot higher risk, a lot more variation in there. So how do you manage that when they blow out so much? Well, include variation into your estimates rather than estimating with the assumption things are going to go perfectly. Estimate with the assumption that things are not going to go perfectly. Easy way to do this is look at the low risk estimate. So if all went according to plan and take this long, and then say, well, what's the factor on this? You're saying it's 2 or 3. Use either of those to factor up that estimate so that you're estimating the right amount of time. Trying to be super specific with estimates anyway is a waste of time, because there's so much interaction and everything between people and teams that we're often looking at the sum of estimated time and ignoring the elapsed time component of that. So what I mean is, I've got to hand over the work to you and you're busy doing something else. So even though we estimated, it's going to take 2 hours for the person for me, a day or so for me, and then 3 hours for you, you can't actually have it in that much time. You can't sum that time because of all the time it takes with handovers and everything. So if you're looking at that as a total, then that's really going to blow out, because you're estimating based on task time and touch time as opposed to elapsed time. Now, if you really want to eliminate the actual problem of this estimating, of the estimates blowing out, is rather than giving the estimated time to the single task, give half of it to the single task and take half of it for the team. So what I mean is, let's say I'm thinking, this thing's probably going to take me 4 hours, but it's a factor 2. Rather than making it at 8 hours for me, just interject, same applies with story points, same concept. If you've got 10 story points for the week, whatever, rather than saying something's 1, if it's a factor of 2 that it might blow out to, use the factor of 2. Doesn't matter whether you're using hours or points as your measurement system. Anyway, I've got this thing, I'm going to give myself the 4-hour task. Let's say I'll have 6 hours for me, so there's a bit of leeway in there because it's likely to blow out a bit. And the other 2 hours goes to the team and gets put at the end of, let's say, a sprint. That way, because we don't know which tasks are actually going to really blow out and which ones are going to go fine. But if we put 8 hours on me, I'm no longer trying to complete it in that goal 4 hours. I'm going to come up to that task and think I've got 8 hours to do it. Problem with that is, then the rest of the team doesn't get to benefit from if it could have gone quicker, and I could have handed over that task sooner, and we could have got the ball rolling there. Now the next person in the line might actually need that full amount of time. They might need more than that, but by putting my 2 hours into the end of the sprint as just a buffer there, they can use some of that time when it comes up to them doing the tasks. So the idea is you are including the risk estimate, that factor, into your estimating in the first place, so that you're not just ignoring the fact that we work in a variable environment in software, and you're taking that estimate and some of it you're giving to the individual task and some to the buffer. Now, why not all to the buffer? It won't be a fun feeling if every estimate is wrong and you're using some of the buffer every time. So people can have a bit of that factored estimate attached to their task. The other part goes to the buffer for the whole team to draw on when it's actually needed, rather than just having it there as a safety net that gets used but not used as safety on every single task. Put it all at the end, you're going to end up with a day or two's buffer at the end, and you can then manage that as the team goes through the sprint. Are we using a lot of the buffer, and are we at high risk of not completing the sprint, or do we have plenty of buffer there? That way you're actually actively managing the sprint. I mean, if you think about the idea of transparency and inspection and adaptation in a scrum, well, the transparency, you need the transparency of how you're progressing. The inspection, you don't have to inspect anything. Nobody has to be an expert at that. You can just see how much of the buffer is being used. And adaptation, adapt. If you've used half the buffer and you're not halfway through the week, it's not going to go to plan. So do something different. So there you go. There's a methodical way of actually ensuring that you don't get the negative effects of variation and estimates of blowout affecting your sprints. So do that, and it will make a huge difference to the performance and reliability of those teams. If you like today's video, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more of these. Don't forget to share it around so that other people can get some of this value out of it too. And of course, say hi in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Cheers.